Okay, good afternoon. Thanks first of all to the organizer for the opportunity to be here and to you all for being here. I hope I can, by myself, keep you awake after lunch. So as already said, this is a collaboration with other co-authors from INED and the University of Lausanne, Chiara, who you have heard already before, and Laura from the University of Lausanne, and Emmanuelle Cambois and Ariane Pailhé at INED. And this is part of the project that you also have already heard from, Wellbeing, which is about professional and family trajectories and well-being in Switzerland and in France. So I'm dealing with the French data and studying the association between past union dissolutions, one or more, and different dimensions of well-being. So the background for this study is the increasing diversity and complexity of family trajectories in recent decades. In particularly, I'm referring to decreasing marriage rates and increasing divorce rates, although divorce rates have now reached a plateau in the last couple of decades. For example, in France, which is the setting of the study, it is estimated that around 45 unions out of 100 end up in dissolutions. And as well as remarriage rates have been increasing, which means that an increasing number of people face the consequences of critical family events and especially dissolutions over the life course, consequences that are in many dimensions of well-being, including health, including financial resources and social resources, as well as many more and more people also face multiple transitions in their life. And especially what we are interested in here is multiple dissolutions. So there is a quite consistent evidence that critical family events and family trajectories do have a consistent impact on different dimensions of well-being. Just to mention, the main result of this quite wide research are that married individuals tend to have a better mental and physical health and life satisfaction, while the experience of union dissolution and lone parenthood tend to have a negative effect on individuals' well-being. On the other side, repartnering and remarrying is usually associated again with an increase in well-being, and remarrying and repartnering seem to help individuals to cope with past dissolution as well. So individuals are more able to recuperate after a drop in well-being from dissolution. The literature also shown that the effect of critical events and dissolutions are quite heterogeneous, depending on demographic and socio-economic characteristics of individuals. It is usually argued and found that women tend to be affected more negatively overall by union dissolutions, and this is due to the fact that they are more likely to experience a drop in financial resources, and they are usually more likely to have to cope with lone parenthood and usually are less able to repartner quickly, often because of the presence of children, for example. However, on the other side, it has also been shown that men tend to suffer more from a loss or a drop in social resources after union dissolutions. The effect is also quite heterogeneous depending on socio-economic background and resources of individuals. First of all, health and well-being are unequally distributed in the population, as I think most of us in this room know. People with less resources are then more likely to experience critical life events, so lower educated people and people with lower income in this case are more likely to experience union dissolutions in the first place, and they tend to suffer more from the consequences of such events. On the other hand, it has been shown that education, employment, income and a social network all give individuals the resources to actually cope better with the consequences of divorce, of union dissolutions. Definitely less rich is the evidence on the effect of multiple dissolutions on well-being. There are some early studies that have shown, for example, that what have been called serial marriers, so people who have married 3 or more times, tend to have higher level of psychological distress, and this is true especially for women. These studies have shown that usually is something that led on the first place to having multiple dissolution. So for example, people who tend to have too high expectations about marriage, or that are more likely to have psychological issues in the first place. However, other studies have shown that individuals, and especially women again, even if they are married at the time of when well-being is measured, tend to have as well higher level of distress, and also are more likely to develop serious health conditions compared to people that experienced less union dissolutions or no dissolutions at all, of course. Other studies have argued whether there might be an accumulation versus an adaptation process, so whether experiencing more than one dissolution leads to an even worse or deepest drop in well-being considered to the first dissolution. So basically they have compared the effect of a first dissolution to the effect of a second or third dissolution. And they actually have shown that there is also some proof of an adaptation process, in the sense that further dissolutions actually led to a smaller drop in well-being compared to the first dissolution. Studies have also shown that in any case the effects of dissolution and of several dissolutions tend to diminish over time, so people tend to adapt and sometimes completely recover, and for this it is particularly important also to study the time from dissolution when examining the effect on well-being. Last point, but of course particularly important for this conference, and I'm going to just go briefly on this because I guess most people in the room knows more than me about this. But it has been argued that it is very important to consider different dimensions of well-being, because well-being is multidimensional in itself. There has been quite big arguments in the literature on how exactly to define and measure well-being, and very different options have been proposed, from one index that includes different dimensions of well-being on unidimensional measures such as life satisfaction. However, it has also been argued that even these kind of comprehensive measures such as life satisfaction, if considered by themselves, leads to a loss in some important information about other dimensions of well-being. And studies have also shown that life events can have differential effects depending on the dimension of well-being that is considered. And for example, the time effect can be different as well, depending on the dimensions. And for this reason also it is particularly important to look at to consider well-being in a multidimensional way. So what we do in this study is to look at the association between past union dissolutions, one or more, and different dimensions of well-being. And we are particularly interested in studying whether the association between dissolution and well-being vary depending on the number of dissolutions experienced and on the timing from the last dissolution, and whether this association vary depending on gender and resources, so socio-economic status mainly, and social resources. To do this, we use the data from the Santé itinéraire professionnel, so health and professional itineraries. This is French data, collected in 2006 and 2010. The aim of this survey was to collect mainly information about employment trajectories, employment stories, and health. They also collected quite detailed information about partnership stories. So our sample is around 9,000 individuals, because we consider individuals between 25 and 65 years. We all have retrospective information about partnership histories, and then dissolutions, of course, and the current well-being. In terms of current well-being, several measures are included in the survey. We have selected a few for this study and especially for this presentation. These are general self-reported health in a 1 to 5 scale, from very poor to very good, which in this study and this presentation we dichotomized in a dummy variable that is one if the individual has good or very good health, so which we call optimal health, compared to less than optimal. We have a measure of whether the individual experiences depressive symptoms, sleep disorders, and another measure which is about the satisfaction with professional career from 1 to 10. The definition of dissolution is the end of a union, so both marriage and union and non-marriage union. In France, civil unionship are very common, so we don't divide between the two. That lasted at least 1 year or less, but with children. And we divided them in categories depending on the number and the timing. So one dissolution at least, so less than 4 years before 2006, which is when well-being is measured. And then one dissolution more than 5 years before, and then 2 dissolution with the last one being before less than 5 years before or more than 5 years before, and people who never partnered. We could include controls, so all models are controlled for age, education, father's education, number of kids, household income, and employment and partnership status in 2006. So we want to see the association between dissolutions and well-being net of the partnership status at the moment. And we run a simple regression and logistic model with the sample divided always by gender and also by resources and current situation of the individual. So education, which I will show, we also run it by income, by employment status, which I will partly show, and social network, and then current partnership status, which I will not show. So these are some descriptives, but I don't think I need to show them. Okay, so first of all, these are the four measures of well-being that we consider, and these are the coefficients from the regression models. And in particular, what we're interested in is the coefficients of these variables that are the one of the solutions. What we can see here, so this general health, depressive mood, sleep disorders, and satisfaction with career. And then the blue are women, the blue dots, and the red dot are men. What I think is mainly interesting here is that what we can see is the experience of more than one dissolution, so 2 or plus, both with the last dissolution being recent or older than 5 years, are associated with lower well-being in all the measures considered. On the contrary, if you look at only one dissolution, the association very much depends on the timing. So usually, general health doesn't seem to be associated with recent dissolution. It seems to be a longer process and a more accumulative process happening in the case of more than one dissolution. While if you look at depressive symptom and especially sleep disorder, there seems to be a more immediate association with very recent dissolutions. When we divide by education, of course here the sample sizes become a bit small, so I might actually in a second moment just put together again men and women. But what I think also is interesting is that we can see that individuals with less than lower secondary education or lower education tend to show negative association between well-being and past union dissolutions, while the results are much less clear and depends more on gender when we look at higher educated people. And this again is particularly clear when we look at sleep disorder, where all our coefficients for past dissolutions are significant for lower educated people, while they are not really for higher educated people, as well as with satisfaction with career, which seems to be more associated for lower educated people than higher educated people. I don't have much time, I think, but employment status doesn't seem to change much. We expected people not employed to have to show a stronger association of past union dissolutions with well-being. This is not really the case. It is also true that the non-employed part of the sample is more varied because it includes, although they're it's a very small part of the population, but students and retired people and unemployed. So it might be more varied population, while employed individuals, which are the majority, tend to show associations that are similar to the overall population. To conclude, we do see an association between past dissolutions and well-being, and all our measures of well-being net of actual partnership status and other current characteristic of the individuals. The associations vary depending on the number and the timing. Having experienced more than one dissolution seems to be always associated with lower well-being, while only one depends, depending on gender of the individuals and the timing of the dissolution. And we also see, as we expected, differential association with past dissolution depending on especially socio-economic characteristic, and in this case education, with lower educated individuals showing a stronger association with between past dissolution and well-being. These are the next steps, but thank you for the attention.